Welcome to Beyond the Chutes, where we discuss New York Rodeo, the people and the places they take us. Sam Swearingen is from Leicester, New York. He was a competitor for about 40 years, a stock contractor for 30 years, and he has coached and mentored many rodeo athletes. A few weeks ago, Sam came to Taylorsville, Kentucky. We sat at our kitchen table and we discussed a number of topics that fortunately we recorded. In this episode, Sam talks about finding rodeo, about Little Britches Rodeo, and his first big win, the typical cowboy trophy. He talks about his first big road trip and early success. His path is remarkable and shows the grittiness, the stick-to-itness that is required to be really, really great at something. To say that he was driven to succeed is an understatement. Winters in Florida may have been the secret to his success as a saddle bronc rider. Now, to make your listening easier, you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Search for Beyond the Chutes and follow us. I hope that you enjoy. When did you become aware of rodeo?
Oh, boy, that's tough. I would say probably 5 or 6 years old is that's what I wanted to do.
And because your mom and dad were involved a bit.
Yeah. They were involved. They put on some Little Britches rodeos when I was about 10, but that's, when the movie The Cowboys came out, I thought, how the heck could you do that movie without me?
Okay.
I didn't understand there was other people out there that wanted to do what I wanted to do. So, but at 10 years old, my parents had those Little Britches rodeos. I qualified for the Little Britches finals was in Colorado, and we went out there. And
10 years old, you traveled to Colorado for the Little Britches National Finals?
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember about that trip?
A lot of driving.
Yeah.
It was long at that time, and gas prices were very cheap. They were having gas wars. You could go out. We stayed at somebody's house in an elderly lady, and it was neat. I won just a trophy for most typical cowboy. I don't know what that was.
Okay.
I didn't at that time. I didn't even understand what it meant. But the trophy was about as tall as I was, and I did. I don't know if I placed or did anything there, but I did. I held my own.
What events were you competing in?
Probably everything they had. Bull riding, bareback riding, goat tying, flag race, whatever they did,
Okay.
you had to get on somebody else's horse for those other events, but I probably did everything.
Okay. And what it left a mark?
Yeah, it was something to be, you still see the arena. It was bigger than anything you ever been into, yeah, for a young kid, it was like, this is pretty cool,
Big adventure, lots of miles. The whole family go?
Pretty much my father didn't go. He stayed and worked, but
Okay.
the rest of the family went.
And did Mike compete out there as well?
Yep.
Okay.
Mike did. And yeah, I think it might have been just me and Mike that competed. I don't know if I don't think Danny did, and I don't think Pearl, which would have been eligible to compete, but I don't think they took a horse and did anything like that. Had a camper on a neighbor's truck and a camper, and away we went.
Okay. Oh, everybody stayed in the camper.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you come back. What's the next step of things? What's your next memories of after the Little Britches Rodeo, the finals?
Well, I wanted to ride bulls. That's what I wanted to do. We roped calves some and like that, but I wanted to ride bulls, and like I said, they entered Attica when I was 12, and went from there to. We were messing around and bucking horses at the house one day, and I always thought, well, I'll never get on a saddle bronc. You hear the story, get your foot hung up and all that. Well, I got on one there, and that was it. I was about 14 then.
14.
Yeah.
And where'd you get the equipment?
I don't even know if it was equipment. It was it was a saddle, but I don't know, you know.
But first time you'd handled a bronc rein.
Yeah.
Was there anybody, there had to be somebody there giving you some guidance?
There had to be. I don't remember who it was or whatever, but it might have been Mike's saddle. He was probably riding by then, and I probably just jumped in that, and horse threw me up over his head and stomped down my back. But it was the neatest thing because he really blew, and it was pretty cool.
So you got up after you got stomped on, probably with a smile on your face.
I got up wanting to do more of it.
You got wanting to do more of it. Mm-hmm. So at 14, you get on your first bronc. So high school rodeo?
No, there was no such thing.
No such thing.
Yeah, they had high school rodeo, but not back
How
east.
far would you have had to travel to get to an association?
I would probably say maybe Tennessee or
that
something.
Far?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So those formative years, 14, you're a freshman in high school, through graduation. What was your rodeo journey there?
Very limited.
It was.
Yeah, okay. Very limited till I got to be a junior or senior in high school. You went to. There was 3 or 4 rodeos close enough by to get on. I started going up to the Phillipses when they bucked stuff out. When I had a driver's license, so it's probably 16 when I went up there and started riding some. And you only had 2 or 3 rodeos to go to, so it was pretty limited.
So what were other Attica? What were those? Gary? Would you?
No, Gary was PRCA. You couldn't get into that. They had some Lima, which was going, and that was probably pretty much done by then. I rode there when I was really, 10 or 12. Okay. Went, and we'd go to Canada a little bit. Yeah, I remember going to Canada some, and but there wasn't a lot to get to.
Right. And so as soon as you could drive, and again, it's interesting. I get the movie, The Cowboys, but to have that much desire when it was kind of limited exposure, it was hard to find it, is what I'm understanding.
Yeah, and hard to get there. What Mike was going, he probably graduated by then, and when he would go to rodeos, and maybe I'd take along, but they were bigger rodeos that I couldn't get into.
Okay.
Probably the first rodeo, I know the first rodeo I got on broncs at was in Rochester, New York. Jay Barjay came down and put it on. I got in a novice bronc riding, probably been on 5 or 6 horses ever, and it didn't fare too well.
And was that like an IPRA rodeo at that time?
Yeah.
It was. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you were getting on the real stuff.
I was getting on any opportunity I could.
Right.
Even as far as loading horses in the chutes, I'd saddle up 2 riding horses and kick them out in the arena, and the one that was supposed to buck but probably didn't. I worked my way all alone to ride it, kind of pushing the gate open, and just dumb when Mom pulled in the driveway. That was the last time I got to do that.
Yeah,
but they'd get in a corner, and you get off on one of the horses with a saddle on, because you might have rode them for 3 minutes till. So
that was your pickup horse.
Yeah.
And hopefully at some point they came together.
Well, they would after a while. Yeah. It happened.
Right. And if the one you were on didn't buck, when you got on the other one, he might buck?
He might, yeah. Yeah. And Mike bought a bucking machine, which really helped with timing. Like I could get on that. I didn't have any help, but it was in the backyard. You could start it up and jump on it and ride, and it really helped with timing in bronc riding. Now, I don't know if it did much else, but it did help with timing.
I see.
So
I see.
you know,
Rodeo schools?
no, they really weren't heard of at that time. At least I wasn't. I'm sure were doing them out west and been doing them for years, but back there I never heard of it. A rodeo school. Yeah.
So after the J Bar J experience in Rochester, what was the next big movement you might have had?
I really didn't do much till I was about a junior or senior. Mike was going to rodeos down in Pennsylvania and all that, and then I could go. I could go with him, and bought my APRA card, and like it's either 2 or 22 is the number. Like it was one of the first.
Oh wow!
Yeah, 52. I don't know, but it's way below 100, and then made the ARA finals and won average the first year I went, and I was probably still in high school then.
Okay. And who were the stock contractors then?
Dave Martin was just starting up. There was a guy out of Virginia that did some, and a guy from Maryland was Kenny Brown was his name.
Mm-hmm. And where were the finals that first year? Do you remember?
They were in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
At the State Farm?
Yeah, at the Farm Show.
Farm Show Arena?
Mm-hmm. And that was, it was 2 performances one day on a Saturday.
Okay.
I had 2 performances one day.
2 for 2 in the Bronx?
I was, yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember Kenny Brown, I had one of his horses. I had Dave Martin's real good horse and won the first round running away. And had one of Kenny Brown's horses that if you ever, and I really didn't know the man, I never even met the man before that, but boy, he was just, this horse is going to slam you, just running his mouth like crazy. What is this guy? And he just kind of hopped down through there like, and didn't do hardly anything, but it was like.
You were introduced to the head game.
That's exactly what it was. I probably didn't have enough sense to know that at this time, but that's exactly what he was doing. Yeah, and looking back, it's like, wow, why why would you do that to somebody?
Right,
what?
Right. And that happened on occasion.
Oh,
try to get under your skin just a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what the average pay that first finals you won the average at?
I won over $300.
Holy cow!
And that seemed like a small fortune at that time. I mean, my parents even drove down and watched it and drove back the same night because they didn't get a room.
Sure,
and
sure.
I said, I had money. Why didn't you ask me? I'll give you money for a room,
Right.
Yeah.
So what was next then? Was it you had a bunch of money in your pocket? Was it time to break out and time to go a little bit harder?
No, I didn't. I didn't really go until, it might have been about April that next year. Or the year, maybe the year after. I don't know. I was out of school. I had graduated when I went, and the first rodeos I went to, I entered one in Iowa, one in, I don't know, it was a Montgomery, Alabama, one in Florida. When I entered, I took off and went, and the first week I did well. I mean, won 2 out of the 3 and placed the other pretty deep, and it was like, this is easy. Hell, ain't nothing to it. Won me $700-800 there. I'll never have another poor day in my life. And I might have went 3 months before I placed again.
Is that right? Now
I
this
don't
was
know, but
IPRA stuff.
yeah.
Okay. So that was and that was a move. APRA was northeast,
Yeah.
right? And the IPRA, you could go. You said Iowa. That's across the Mississippi.
Yeah.
So you're headed west a bit,
West and south and
living on the road.
yep.
Stayed out that whole run.
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And I had gone to the first IRA rodeo I ever entered. I was still in high school, and I went with somebody was taking a horse out to Oklahoma or something, and there was a rodeo on the way back, and they said, "You want to go?" And I said, "Yeah, let's go." And I went there and I watched these guys ride, and my mouth was wide open. I thought, "Holy shit, how do they do this?" But there again, you're only as good as your competition, and I won second at the rodeo, and couldn't even ride with these guys. I never seen anybody spur horses like this. You seen spur horses like that, but not consecutively. And it was like, wow. And yeah, it was a good experience. And the trailer door, the side that had a little 2-horse trailer with the place under the manger to put your tack and all that came open. My saddle fell out, and I lost the saddle
On the road.
on the road.
Your bronc riding saddle.
My bronc riding saddle.
On this first trip?
Well, yeah. This was the one that I went out with somebody else.
Oh, when
yeah.
you were coming back after
Right.
dropping off a horse. So before or after the rodeo, you lost your saddle?
Afterwards.
After that.
Yeah.
You made a little money. Was it enough to buy another saddle?
No, I don't think so. I have no idea. And yeah, I don't know if the rodeo's over, if I got paid. I have no idea what went on there. But no, it wasn't enough to buy a saddle. And
You get home and you don't have a saddle.
yeah, well, we seen the door. We stopped and the door was open, and yeah, I knew before we got home I didn't have a saddle.
Didn't double back and go look for it?
I did make them go back and look a little bit, but they knew it was a lost cause, but I didn't
Yeah.
think that,
Yeah. So when you did the first big run, Iowa into Florida, traveling partners?
No, but once I got to Florida, Mike was down there.
Oh,
and
okay.
then I could stay with him. And
So he was living down there, rodeoing in Florida?
yeah.
Okay. And that was SRA?
Florida had a FCA, which was
FCA.
Florida Cowboys, and then it had IRA too, and it was pretty big through the winters. A lot of people went to south, and you worked a job and you rodeoed. There was probably they had buckouts like every Tuesday or Wednesday night, right there, close to where we lived at Davie, Florida, and I could get on. And that really, really helped me, because when I did come back to the Northeast, and I thought, well, heck, what's wrong with these guys? They rode as good as I did when I left.
Yeah.
And then I came back, and I was miles ahead of
Really?
everybody else,
Okay.
because you didn't stop. Everybody stopped up there 6-8 months before you did it again. And I didn't stop. I just kept going.
And definitely getting on broncs every week. Any additional instruction, or was it still pick it up as you go?
No, by this time there was instruction.
Okay.
The contractor then had a horse he called Charlie. I remember him, and I'd ride him out through there, and he'd ride up. He was picking up, and he'd grab that buck rein and jerk on him and stop Charlie, and he'd tell you what you were doing wrong and slap old Charlie in the ass, and away you go.
Oh, wow.
And that right there is probably the time that I didn't think of it at the time, but that's why with the kids, you wanted to put them on the right stuff to learn, not to get hurt.
Yeah. And you're picking up the spur stroke. You're learning to work with your rein, right? You're working on basics. and it's simply coming together for you.
Yeah, it when you got on the right horses, it worked pretty good most of the time. And yeah, I'm not saying I picked it up quick or anything like that, but it was keep doing and doing. And I remember the contractor one time. I had a really good horse that stopped at 7, and it was the big rodeo down there. And I knew he had 2 outstanding horses, and back then they wouldn't tell you what the re-ride was till after you said whether you took it or not. And I wanted a re-ride because I knew these 2 horses didn't go that day, and I thought, well, I can get one of them, and it'll be great. And afterwards, the horse wasn't as good, and he said, why did you do that? And I told him. He said, oh, okay. And he was a rough old boy. First time you see him, he was tough on people. He was tough. And but when I told him what my theory was, because I probably was going to win the rodeo without taking the re-ride, I probably would have won first.
Okay.
Which is hindsight. But I wanted to get on those 2 horses, that were, one of those was outstanding.
Okay. Did you ever get on those horses, another rodeo?
I got on, yeah, the one of them only got on once and rode him terrible. It wasn't good. And the other one, which his name was Smart Dugan, and actually I had gotten on him the very first week I went off rodeoing.
Okay.
I had him down there, and he bucked. Oh Lord, he bucked. And I rode him, and the one clown came up and said, "What were you saying out there?" I said, "What do you mean? What were you saying?" He said, "You went by me. You were going wahoo, yeehaw, woo." Never knew I was doing it, but that horse was incredible. I'd have never rode him if the ground wasn't real deep sand. Okay. He was that good. He could buck anybody off at any day. Okay. Little horse probably weighed 900 pounds and just bucked.
Yeah. So how many years did you winter in Davie?
Probably 2 or 3. Yeah.
And all consecutive? I mean, yeah. So this is a sharp focus. You can get on broncs during the week, right? Practice broncs. I take that was a jackpot, maybe?
No, it was just a practice night.
Just a practice night.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have your winter workout on these broncs.
Yeah. I worked a job, construction, real good man put us on, and I don't know as he got a lot out of us because you're gone a lot, but he was cowboy, and he had a big construction company, and we all kind of worked for him, and we could get on the middle of the week and go to his place and team roped, and it worked, and there was some really good competition because the guys from the west would go down there in the wintertime,
okay,
and keep going. Yep.
So you're in the practice pen, but you also every weekend you can be somewhere rodeoing all winter long.
Yeah.
Okay. And after the first year, you come back north. You realize you've gained on the competitors up in the Northeast. What did that summer look like? Did you go hard?
Probably went to everything I could.
Yeah.
Everything in New York, Pennsylvania, Canada that you could get to.
Okay. Yeah. And made what finals that year? Do you recall?
Oh, well, in the bronc riding, probably made everything I had a card to. Probably 3 or 4 different finals. Yeah.
Okay. So you got busy in the fall with all the finals and good money there.
Yep.
Do you recall how you did that year? Finals and all things in.
No, I don't. I know that ARA finals, I won that because I won that like 10 years in a row.
Yep. Yep.
But everything else, I don't recall. I started going to SRA rodeos then too, Southern Rodeo Association. Okay. Yeah.
So ARA, APRA, IPRA, SRA, ERA is gone at this point.
ERA is gone. Yeah.
PRCA?
No. At that time, you couldn't ride anything but PRCA.
Really? So let me just get this clear. So if you wanted to ride PRCA in the Northeast, you couldn't have any of the other cards?
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah, if it was PRCA, it was strictly PRCA.
Okay.
And the PRCA was Cowtown, which was 6 hours from home on a Saturday night. You couldn't get to another rodeo. Or Painted Pony, which was 5 hours away, and didn't make sense, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So you would have really, that's it in the Northeast.
That was it at that time. They didn't have any PRCA rodeos on the road, I don't think.
Okay. Otherwise, you got to leave the region, the circuit, and go ride somewhere else.
Right.
And how many rodeos could you do with these other associations? How many rodeos could you do in a year?
I probably did, I would say around 30 to 40 rodeos in the summer months. And in the winter, you only went to a couple a week. You know, Longhorn had their rodeos pretty much every weekend. You'd go to that. And then the World's Toughest started up, and you could go to those. So there got to be some to go to in the winter.
And the World's Toughest was IPRA as well.
Correct.
Correct. And so you could, and Longhorn, that had been going on for a while before you started competing?
Yeah. Yeah. They'd been in business. It was originally Loretta Lynn Rodeo, and Bruce Lurkey bought that from her and started running it under Longhorn.
And do you remember your best year in those early years? Maybe total winnings for the year. All things in, all things done.
I would probably say 20 to 30,000.
Okay.
Would have everything together, you know. I remember Clovis Crane's father, Joe Crane, was talking to Clint Johnson, and, you know, I just heard him say, I was standing, wasn't there, and he said, well, you know, this boy makes pretty good money for back here. He probably runs 20,000 or something like that. And Clint Johnson said, ooh, that's pretty good for, you know, for not going anywhere.
Sam tells the story so clearly that it is easy to imagine the adventure that he was on. Losing your saddle bronc saddle on your second big road trip would be a huge setback. The difference between being an amateur rodeo cowboy and a professional rodeo cowboy? Professional rodeo cowboys get paid. Google says that winning $20,000 riding saddle broncs in 1980 would be equivalent to winning $74,000 today. Pretty serious money. Sam did this by riding at so many different associations. Can you imagine the PRCA not allowing you to ride in other professional rodeo associations? Because of the PRCA rule, Sam couldn't even ride at one of New York's oldest, most prestigious PRCA rodeos, Gary, New York. In our next episode, we will talk with Sam about making some big finals and some of the successes that he enjoyed as a professional rodeo cowboy. I hope that you enjoyed this story. If you do, please share it with your friends. To make your listening easier, you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Search for Beyond the Chutes and follow us. Click like, click follow. And a reminder, check out the New York State Rodeo Museum Facebook group page and become a member. It is that Facebook page that started this podcast on its way. If you have any pictures that go along with these stories, please post them in the comments below the podcast postings. I want to help Betty Johnson capture and catalog these great New York State rodeo memories. This is Beyond the Chutes. Until next time, thank you for listening.